Hi, welcome to the Mobile Home Mama radio show, where we dive deep into the world of mobile home investing and real estate investing. I'm your host, Stephanie McAnuff, bringing you expert insights, inspiring stories, and valuable tips. Let's get started. So today, we have a special episode lined up. We're diving deep into a topic that I've personally experienced multiple times, unfortunately, but incredibly important for mobile home owners. And that's tenant evictions, the writ of possession process, and what to do when you're left with a mobile home without a title. Well, let's make yourself comfortable, grab a pen and a piece of paper, because you're in for some valuable insights. We're going to break down the eviction process in North Carolina, explore some of the intricacies of the writ of possession, and discuss how to obtain a title for that mobile home that you unexpectedly came your way. Let's start with the basics. So, the eviction process in North Carolina. What mobile home owners need to know. We'll go through the steps, the legal aspects, and how to navigate the system effectively. Now, I want to say to you, I'm not an attorney. I'm not trained as an attorney. So any information in this is not being given to you as legal advice. This is just my experience, things that I've done with the eviction process and the writ of possession process in the past and currently in the state of North Carolina. This also may work in South Carolina. Done evictions there, the process is very similar. So let's get into it. First thing you need to do is go to your local courthouse. And you're going to go to the civil division. And you'll reach out to them and just let them know that you're wanting to file an eviction. I will let you know some of the courts are allowing for online filing of these documents. It's not very many of them. I think it's about 4, maybe 6 counties in North Carolina that is allowing for filing your documents online. I know Mecklenburg County, that's the Charlotte area, is one of those counties. I have gone through that process. It is the same paperwork that you're going to submit in person that you will online. What you're doing is a summary ejectment. I'm not going to tell the numbers of the forms or anything like that. We won't go into the details of it, but I'm just going to let you know the process is relatively easy. You do not need to hire an attorney. One thing about me, the Mobile Home Mama, I try to keep things very cost effective. Try to teach you ways of doing things that you can do yourself, and if you can't do it yourself, a very cost effective way of getting it done. So, if you run into any issues, most court systems have a self-help section. So you can go into that self-help section. It's an actual office in most court rooms or departments. And I know Mecklenburg County definitely has one. And you can go in there, or you can talk to the clerk that you're handling your documents and say, hey, I filled this out. Can you please make sure that I filled it out correctly? Now, they will tell you they cannot give you any legal advice. You're not asking for legal advice. You're just making sure that you dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's, and that you put the information that's needed into the document. And they should be able to answer those questions. Now, let's go back. With a summary ejectment, there's different things that you can evict a tenant for or remove a tenant. Most people, the common thing is past due rent. Yes, you can evict for past due rent, but you can also evict for lease violations. You can evict for, not following rules. Their dog bit someone, which I would consider a lease violation. So let's go back. I want to go back a little bit. For those of you who may not have a written lease, because you didn't know about the Mobile Home Mama before you got started, but now you do. For those of you who do not have a written lease, you can still file a summary ejectment, an eviction. You just have to check off that it's an oral lease. It may be a little bit more work to it. Depends on the magistrate that you get that's going to hear your case. And I'm going to talk about who a magistrate is and the difference between a magistrate and, say, a judge in a criminal case, okay? But let's stay with the summary ejectment in this paperwork. So these are the reasons why you can evict. Any of those. They didn't pay their money. They violated the rules. They abandoned the home. They left the home and it's abandoned. If it's an oral lease, of course, those things are not in writing. So you're going to have to prove that those are violations. If you do, they abandoned the home or they didn't follow your rules, etc. Not paying the rent, that's very easy to prove if you have an oral lease. Here's my lease. We agreed that they would pay $500 a month. They have not been paying that $500 a month. When you go into court, you will be under oath, and so will the defendant or the tenant that you're going after. They will be under oath as well. So hopefully they're not going to lie while they're under oath and say, no, we didn't agree to my rent being $500. You can also show proof by having money orders or checks or Venmo or Cash App ledgers showing that they were paying that rent amount. That's going to be very important for you to prove your case with an oral lease, meaning a lease that you just had a verbal conversation and agreed that, hey, I'm going to let you rent my home or whatever. And it was just verbal, not in writing. Now, do I recommend that you do oral leases? No, I do not. I recommend, even if it's your mama, your daddy, your cousin, whoever, that you put things in writing. Make it a written lease. Now, I know what you're going to say. Hey, mama, where do I get a lease from? I don't know anything about this. There are leases right now. You can go to, believe it or not, Walmart. They have these little real estate packages with legal forms in it. You can go to Office Depot, not sponsored by any of these, but these are places that you can go. Go online, look up a North Carolina lease agreement. Just be careful that you're not choosing a lease agreement that is specifically used for North Carolina real estate brokers that are, they're a part of the North Carolina Real Estate Investment Board or something like that. Those, it'll say on there that it can only be used by a member of that organization. But a generic lease agreement specifically for your state, in this time we're talking about North Carolina, but specifically for your state, you can get a generic lease agreement. There's also a program called eForms. eForms online, eForms.com. Again, not sponsored. You can go to that website and you can actually fill in the information that you need for your lease agreement. All right. So now we talked about lease agreements. So back to our summary ejectment. So now you have a written lease agreement or oral lease agreement. Then you have to have your reason why you're evicted. In most of the cases that I evict, it's typically because they're behind on their rent. I have had it where there was an abandonment, meaning that someone was living in the home and then they just left. But usually that abandonment happens because they did not pay their rent. So I am able to put that on my summary ejectment. On the summary ejectment form, you're going to put your name as the plaintiff, and then you're going to put the tenant's name as the defendant. It will also ask for the address, your address, and the defendant's address. Make sure that those addresses are real addresses that receive mail. Why? Because when you submit this paperwork, the court will then give that paperwork over to the sheriff's department to serve the tenant, meaning that they are going to let them know, hey, you have court date at this courtroom, this date, this time, and it's going to be a piece of paper. They will then, if they're not able to serve that person the first 2 times, they will go back on the 3rd time. On the 3rd time, if they're not able to present those documents to them in their hand, they will then post it on their door, and they will also mail them a copy. They will also mail you a copy. So when you are filing these documents, you need to make sure that you have an accurate mailing address for yourself and for the tenant. because the worst thing that you can do is file an eviction. And in North Carolina, that eviction cost is $126. You don't want to waste $126 because you did not get the notice of when the court date was, where, and what time. So you didn't show up, and it ends up getting thrown out. So very, very important. The other thing that you want to do is you need to write on there the exact address of the home. There's a spot for, they want to know the address of the home and what does the home look like. Keep in mind that this summary ejectment and summons and other documents that go along with it, again, talk to your local court room, and they will tell you what documents need to be filed for an eviction. However, when you do this, you want to make sure that, again, that address is accurate, the telephone number on there is accurate. Then you want to put a description of the home, in this case, of the mobile home. So if you know you have a mobile home, it's a blue mobile home with brown tile with, skirting, white skirting. You want to try to be descriptive because, again, the summons is going to be delivered by a sheriff. And sometimes they may not be able to find it by the address. Or they can find it by the address, but they get a little confused. So if you give them some description about the home, it just makes it a little bit more helpful. If you're not able to give that, is it a deal breaker? No, it's not a deal breaker. But you just want to make sure that you give that information. Now, let's talk about some of these lease violations. Maybe they have a dog, and in your lease you have that you can't have a dog, or you can have a dog but you can't have a pit bull or a Rottweiler or something like that. Those are things that you can evict for in itself. You don't need to only evict for them. Then, what if the person abandoned the home? You might say, hey, Stephanie, how do I evict someone if there's no one there? What you're going to do is you're going to evict the last person that was in the home. Only if that person really abandoned the home. Not if it was a tenant that paid and they were fine on their rent, then they left the home. You don't want to do that. I'm going to tell you in a little bit how to handle that process. Actually, it probably will need to be on another show that I will tell you how to handle an abandoned mobile home and getting through that process. Now let's move forward. So now you filed out the paperwork, you got your court date, and you're really nervous because now you have to go to court. You're not an attorney, right? And you have to represent yourself to say, hey, I want this person removed from my home. It's really not that hard. Here's what you need to do. 1, take a deep breath. Be calm. Understand, again, what's my favorite saying? Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? You're fine. You're going to go to court. You're going to have all your paperwork. So that means if you have a written lease, you're going to have that lease printed out. I recommend having 3 copies of the lease. 1 for you, 1 for the magistrate, and 1 for the tenant to look at. So that when you are talking about a specific area of the lease, or the magistrate asks about a specific area of the lease, you can have your own copy, have it highlighted so that you can look at it, magistrate can look at it, and the tenant can look at it, okay? It's going to make your life a lot easier, and it's going to be less nerve-wracking when the magistrate says, where in your lease does it say that you cannot have a dog? Or where in your lease does it say that that the rent amount is $500 a month? Those are very important steps. Now, I do want to go back a little bit because I keep mentioning this magistrate, and I'm not saying judge. It's a magistrate. What is the difference between a magistrate and a judge? A magistrate does not necessarily have to have a law degree, believe it or not. They go to a special class, and they are able to then get elected or get chosen to be a magistrate, meaning that they are somewhat like a judge, but they are just strictly there to handle civil case matters, civil disputes, a dispute between one person and another. Why do I say that? Because sometimes, and I'm just going to be honest with you, especially with mobile homes, a magistrate may not be very familiar with mobile homes. The difference between a mobile home that's on your rented land and the tenant owns the home, the difference between a mobile home that's in a park, the difference between they may not be familiar with mobile homes and how they work. So you will really need to be up on your information to let them know, hey, I own the land, the tenant owns the mobile, or I own both the mobile home and the land, and they are renting from me, just so you can be very clear when you're speaking to them. Now, with the magistrate, again, nothing to be nervous about. They are strictly there to hear your side of the story and the tenant's side of the story. What you need to make sure is that your side of the story is very, very locked down. That means you can tell the magistrate, this is how much the rent is. This is exactly how much the tenant is behind in their rent. Or this is the violation, and this is where that violation is shown in my lease. Again, it would be great for you to have that highlighted on your copy of the lease. Do not highlight it on the magistrate's copy of the lease, and do not highlight it on the tenant's copy of the lease. And you may be saying, well, why won't I do that? One, depending on what magistrate you get, they don't want you telling them how to do their job. Also, the tenant doesn't need to see the highlight. You're going to let them know exactly where that is when you're there in court. Okay? So now, what else do you do? You're there, you're at court. One thing I'm going to recommend, do not talk over the magistrate. As nervous as you're going to be, I don't know what you need to do some breathing exercises, put a rubber band on your wrist or something to pop yourself so that when the magistrate is talking, you do not talk. When the tenant is talking and saying maybe things that are untrue or very unflattering, maybe they said, oh, you're a slumlord and I have holes in my floor and I have rats and roaches or whatever it is, and none of that is true, you really need to stay calm and quiet. Why? I've seen many cases get lost because the landlord or the plaintiff is talking and arguing. And the magistrate is just not going to go. Okay? So be quiet. Just be at peace. And know that you have everything that you need lined out, even if it's an oral list. I want you to write those things down for yourself. These are the things that I'm going to be arguing or discussing in court, so that, again, you are prepared and you are not just going off the cuff and trying to remember, because you won't remember. You're going to be so nervous. You're not going to, more than likely. All right? So now we did. We got through court. Now what happens? Let's say you won your case. You proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that this person does owe back rent. You've also proved that maybe they had a violation. So what happens? The magistrate will let you know. We'll start with back due rent. They will say to you, okay, you proved your case. That means that the tenant is going to be given 10 days to either vacate the property or appeal. Appeal means that they get to bring it to a higher court, usually a district court, which means they're saying, I don't agree with the decision that was made by this magistrate. I want to have another magistrate, person of the court, to hear this case, because I think it'll come out in my favor if I appeal. Here's the thing with an appeal. It's very rare that a tenant will appeal. One, because they don't know how to do it. Two, because they maybe can't afford an attorney to hire to get it done. It's rare, but it does happen. People will go to legal aid, etc., and get an attorney and maybe file an appeal. What does that mean for you? That just means you get to try your case all over again. So make sure that you're writing down what the tenant is saying, their arguments in the court, the first court case. Write those arguments down. Write down things that maybe the magistrate is saying to you, questioning to you, so that you can be prepared if an appeal is filed. Okay, with an appeal, a tenant also, the reason why it's rare is because they have to pay out of pocket for an appeal. They have to pay the court fees, plus they have to pay, if it's from back rent, they have to put that money up as a bond. So if they owe you $2,000, they have to pay whatever the court fee is, plus $2,000 to have being held so that their court can be heard as an appeal. So that's why, another reason why it's very rare that an appeal is filed by a tenant. Now, can you file an appeal? If you lose your case, can you file an appeal? Yes, you can, which is great for the landlord or the owner. You will not have to put up any extra money like that $2,000 for back rent or anything. You will simply have to pay the court fees. Have I filed an appeal before? Yes, I've filed appeals before. Very rare, very, very, very rare. But I have filed an appeal before against a decision by a judge. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, there's ways to retry the case without having to file an appeal. I've done it maybe once out of the hundreds of times that I've been to court and done evictions. And it was just a rare case that the magistrate actually did not follow legal procedures. So therefore I wanted to file an appeal. That was basically it. But again, back with the summary ejectment, keep calm, be prepared, and you will do all right. You will do perfectly fine. The other thing is, what if the tenant does not file that 10-day appeal? They don't appeal. So then what happens? On the 11th day, so let's say you went to court on the 1st, you are not going to be able to do anything until the 11th. So that means you cannot go to the house, you can't threaten the tenants, you can't kick them out, you can't touch the door, you can't walk in and out of the house because you have the keys and you want to see if they did any damage. Just leave the tenant alone for 10 days. Just leave them alone, okay? On the 11th day, still leave them alone. You cannot go in there and bother them. But on the 11th day, you get to go back to the courthouse and you get to file what we call a writ of possession, meaning you're notifying them that you want to get possession of your home, of your property, okay? So you fill this paperwork out. Again, go to the court. They'll tell you how many copies. They'll make sure that you filled it out correctly. And once you do that, you'll submit that paperwork. No, you do not need to go before the magistrate again because you've already won your case. The writ of possession is simply a document that is going to be used by the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department will see this writ of possession, which will say, Stephanie, the mobile home mama, has the right to get possession of this home because she won her case number 1234 in Mecklenburg County. They will get that document. They will then post it on the tenant's door, letting them know, hey, if you didn't leave within this 10 days, we're coming in. They will then, the sheriff will then give you a date and a time as to when they're going to do what they call a set out, meaning they're going to set the tenant out. You need to be prepared in the following ways. You need to be prepared to be able to change the locks. One, have the key to get in. And if you don't have the key to get in, have a locksmith or some ability to get into the home. You will need that because the sheriff is not going to stick around if you can't get into the home and you're just standing there looking at the sheriff. They're not going to break the door down. They're not going to do any of that. They are simply there just to stand there with you legally so that you have the right to go into that home and take possession. Okay? So make sure that you have access to that home. Then what's the next step? If the tenant did not leave within that 10 days and they are still living in that home, the magistrate will speak to the tenants and let them know you have to leave. Not only do you have to leave, you have to take all of your possessions with you. If they do not take their possessions, their couches, their chairs, their TVs, whatever, you get to set those things out, which is why it's also called a set out. You get to take their furniture, and I'm going to say this, please, I understand you're angry. They didn't pay their rent. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. Please be gentle with their things, because they actually can sue you for damaging their items. And also, we don't need to be disrespectful. We can take their items and place them on, basically you're placing them on the street. You're placing them right in front of the home. Be respectful of their items. Then you take all their items, you put them out in front of the home. The magistrate will post a notice on the door letting this tenant know they cannot trespass. They cannot come back to this property. If they come back to the property and say your neighbor calls you or says, hey, Bob is back, then all you have to do is call the sheriff's department or police department and let them know, hey, I did an eviction. This person was set out. They're back on the property. And they will come and either have a conversation with them and let them know they're trespassing, or they can be arrested for trespassing. The other thing that you can do, and this is an option, let's just say you don't have the manpower to take all their possessions out of their home. I've been at evictions where the house is stocked full. For whatever reason, the person just thought they were not going to have to move. They got the writ of possession, the sheriff posted it, everything, and they just are in there just comfortable, feet up, watching Netflix and chilling. It has happened. And I have not had the manpower sometimes to have someone be with me to throw or to remove all of their items. You can say, I'm going to lock your possessions in the home, and then you can give them a 7-day period. They will have 7 days in which to contact you or your representative in order to be able to access that home. Meaning they can't just go in there and use the key. Because why? You're going to change the locks. You're going to secure the home. You're going to change the locks so that they can't get in with their current key. Then, within that 7 days, if they don't come back and remove their items, you can then remove their items. I have donated items to Habitat for Humanity, Salvation Army. There's different organizations that you can donate the items to, and they will actually come pick them up. Or I've had my workers come and empty the home, and we've just removed them, took it to the dump, wherever. At that point, you're not putting it on the street, because then it's just littering and it's in front of your home. So you're only putting it in front of the street, in front of the home, when the tenant has the ability to maybe get a truck or do whatever they need to do to come back and forth and get items. Now, have I put items in front of the house and other people will come by and pick them up? You have neighbors and things like that. That's like a good dining room table or a chair or whatever, and they'll come and they'll take it. Well, for the most part, I try to donate these items. And that is how you do a writ of possession. See, from eviction to writ of possession. Very easy process. It's just about staying calm, getting through the court process, being prepared. Once you're prepared, you won your case, then you can have your writ of possession. Now, no, we didn't talk about money. So you have a tenant that owes you some money, right? And you won the case. Well, do you get the money? Do you get the money? You don't get the money right then and there. You can do, if you win your case, what they do is they put a judgment against that tenant. Basically, it's a lien, and it goes on their credit report. And it'll be for the amount of the past due rent, plus the court costs, plus any late fees that you have. Now, you don't always have to file a judgment. You can just say, I just want possession of my property. I don't want the money, because you're not going to get it or whatever it is. You just want them out. You can do that too. But if you do decide to go after the money, then you'll have a judgment. That judgment will stay on them for 10 years. Believe in the state of North Carolina, prior to the end of that 10 years, if you want that judgment to continue, you need to renew the judgment. You will earn interest on your judgment. I don't know how much the percentage of the interest is. It varies per county, but you will get interest on that money. Have I ever had a tenant come back and I'm able to collect that money? I'm going to be honest with you. I've had it one time of the hundreds that I've done it. One time that I have a tenant come back and says, I want to pay that judgment. Why? because they wanted to buy a house. They were older now, and they realized, they got married, they had children, and they wanted to buy a house. And when they went to go buy their house, they, of course, did a credit check, and my judgment came up on their credit check. So in order to get rid of that judgment in a quick, fast way, they came to me and said, hey, we have this money that we owe you. Is there anything that we can do to get you to remove this judgment? We don't have all of the money because we're buying a house, et cetera, et cetera. What can you do? So we worked something out. They paid a portion of it. I'm not trying to go after anybody. I just wanted my property, right? So, but it was nice. I was able to work something out. We came up with an amount. They paid that amount. I then was able to go down to the court and file a document showing that the judgment had been settled. It was then removed from their credit report, and they were able to go buy their house and live a happily ever after life, I'm assuming, right? So anyway, that is the complete process. I think this is very important. Why? Because everybody talks about how to buy a mobile, how to invest in apartments, how to invest in this, how to invest in that. But they don't get into the nitty gritty of, okay, you invested in these things. Now you have tenants. Now you have, people not paying their rent. You have running toilets and all those things. We're going to talk about all that. But right now we're talking about people not paying their rent, people abandoning the house. What do? This is what you do. You do not have the right, and I'm going to be honest with you. If someone leaves that house and they just walk away, you still need to be very careful. You don't have the right to then just go in that house, clean out their stuff, throw it out, and then rent it to the next person. You can do it, but if that person comes back and says, where's all my stuff? I went on vacation to Vegas and I came back and everything was gone. And you say, well, you were gone for 2 months. They have a valid point and they can sue you. So it is very easy and much better for you to just do the summary ejection process. Cover yourself. Just much easier. How long does the process take? We got to talk about that. Here's what you have to do. 1, you need to give your tenant notice. You need to give them at least 10 days notice before you go and file this summary ejection. I like to do this by a letter. I send them a letter. Does it have to be certified mail? No, it does not. And also it depends on what you have written in your lease. I do not have it written in my lease that it needs to be a certified letter. I just have it in my lease that they must receive a 10-day notice. So you can do it by mail. You can do it by email. You can do it by text message. Don't really recommend it, but you can do it by text message if you want to. And when you do all 3 of them, make sure that you keep a record of when it was sent. So if you did a text message, take a screenshot of your picture of your screen where you said to them, this is your 10-day notice. I am letting you know that you are behind on your rent X amount of dollars. If you're doing an email, make sure you print that email out. If you send a letter, make sure that you print that letter out. Again, all these documents need to go with you to court along with the lease. This goes even if you have an oral lease. Even if you have an oral lease, you must give them a 10-day notice. I do not recommend you doing an oral 10-day notice. I told them they had to leave 10 days ago. Then it's your word against theirs. It's just better to have it in writing. Okay? On the 11th day, you're able to go to the courthouse and you're able to file that summary ejectment paperwork. So it seems like 10 days is the key here. 10-day notice, then file the summary ejectment. If you win the summary ejectment, you then have to wait another 10 days before you can file the writ of possession. So everything happens on the 11th day. Be very, very careful. Do not file the summary ejectment on the 10th day because it may get thrown out by the magistrate because you're supposed to give them a full 10 days notice. Full 10 days notice. So on the 11th day, you get to. Okay, so you don't want to give them that, chance to be able to throw your case out. Now, we talked about all those things. Talked about writ of possessions. We talked about summary ejectment. what to do if you have an oral lease, what to do if you have a written lease, where you get your written leases. All of that has been discussed here. And we discussed staying calm and being comfortable with being uncomfortable. When you first go to court, I'm being honest, your first time you're going to be nervous. Second time you may be still nervous. After that, you're going to be a pro. You're going to go in there, you're going to know what to do, what to say, everything. It's going to be so easy for you to go in there and do it. Now, do I enjoy the eviction process? No, I do. I do not enjoy the eviction process. You know, you're removing someone from their home. They could have children. They could have mothers, fathers. I've been in situations where it was the children, and I say children, but adults that had older parents in their 80s, 90s, that the adult children didn't pay the rent and the older parent was living with them, and unfortunately they also lost their home. I've been there. It's not a pleasant process, but this is the best advice I can give you. Do not do social work in your business. As much as we care and as much as it hurts us, this is a business, okay? So keep that in mind. I'm not going to tell you how far you should let a tenant get behind in their rent. I'm not going to really, I have my opinions. I have what I do. But also, even with me, it depends on the situation of the person I'm dealing with as well. I understand most leases, rent needs to be paid by the 1st, paid on the 1st, late by the 5th, on the 6th, they're late. You're giving them their 10-day notice and you're moving forward. There's a lot of landlords, a lot of property managers that stick with that. I do as well. But there are special circumstances at times when you may vary from that. I'm going to let you know that it's critical that you follow the law, okay? Just follow the law in these matters. Again, do not go into people's homes because they didn't pay their rent and you have a clause in your lease that says you have the right to go in their home. Don't do it. Maybe you want to see how badly they damaged it. Just wait. It's in your best interest not to do that because you don't want to cause any further issues with this tenant or any issues at all with this tenant that may currently not giving you any issue. Now, what about this? I'm the mobile home mama. So what about mobile homes? So you own this mobile home, you evicted the person, and the person actually owned the home. They own the home. Maybe you just own the land. So you did this writ of possession, and you did the summary ejectment, you did the writ of possession. Now you have this home that's sitting there empty, and you do not have the title. What do? You go through the same process you just went through. That process stays the same. Summary 10-day notice, summary ejectment, writ of possession. After that, you will then have this home. You will need to try to figure out, does this person have the title to the home? Are they willing to give you the title? We call it cash for keys. So you can maybe work something out with them like, hey, I will put a judgment on your credit report for this back due amount if you hand over the title. Or I'll give you $200, $500, or a moving truck to move if you give me the title. There's things that you can negotiate. There's things I have definitely done both of those. I've negotiated cash for keys. I've paid for a moving truck. I've even paid to have movers help the person move to their location or storage unit or whatever. You can maybe even pay for a storage unit for 2 months if they give you the title to the home or the keys to the home, or they don't damage the home when they leave. There's so many things that you can do. All of this is involved in this eviction process. And I know you might be saying, oh, that's a lot. It sounds like a lot, but it is very, very, very doable. Okay? Very doable. So remember, you're not alone in this journey. The Mobile Home Mama, I'm definitely here for you. I'm here to support you every step of the way. So I want you to stay tuned for information right here on the Mobile Home Mama Show. I want to thank you for tuning in again to the Mobile Home Mama Show. Don't forget to subscribe and stay inspired for your next mobile home adventure. Until next time, remember, dream big, invest wisely, and make those mobile homes work for you. Thank you for tuning in to WDRB Media. Remember, you can reach out to me, the Mobile Home Mama, on any of my social media at The Mobile Home Mama, my website, themobilehomemama.com. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Feel free to ask me any questions about summary ejectments, writ of possessions, or things that have happened to you. Maybe you have a unique situation that you want to share and you don't know where to go. You don't want to, you don't have money to pay for legal advice. I'm not an attorney, but I may be able to guide you from my years of experience to help you through the process. So that's it for now. Thank you for tuning in.